Emile Durkheim, right? Now, he was the person who was successful in establishing a distinct status of the discipline called sociology. Before that, two prominent persons, they tried to define the subject matter of sociology and the methodology that is to be adopted to study. They were Auguste Comte and Herbert Spencer. But as far as Auguste Comte and Herbert Spencer are concerned, they have not been able to clearly establish a distinct discipline, status of distinct discipline to sociology. It was Durkheim who established it as a distinct discipline. And when you read Durkheim, then what you find that his main concern was how to differentiate sociology from biology, how to differentiate sociology from psychology, and how to differentiate sociology from economics. Right? Now, as far as if you look at Comtean analysis, he says that social changes are nothing but the changes in the mindset of the people or mental states. If you read Auguste Comte, he talks about theological, metaphysical and positive stages. And what he says that all these stages are nothing but mental states. Mental states are related with psychology. That's why Durkheim wanted to distinguish sociology from psychology. When you talk about evolution theory of Herbert Spencer, that is a biological theory or biological model. He doesn't see, he was not able to distinguish social evolution from biological evolution. So that was another concern of Emile Durkheim, right? And the third concern was economics had already established itself as a well-established discipline, and industrial society is about economics. So that was his third concern. So prime concern of Emile Durkheim was to establish a distinct status of the discipline called sociology. Right? Second, what you find that if I could see about the positivist approach, A. Comte, what he had said that sociology is a positive science. Comte had said sociology is a positive science. What is the meaning of this positive science? As we have earlier said, the word positive was attributed to a methodology that is known as scientific method. The reason that this methodology was considered to have a positive impact on the life of the people. The methodology that was used in physics, chemistry, biology, it had helped society in attaining the material superiority, right? Or you can say material prosperity. Naturally, that material prosperity was described as positive for the human society. That's why this word called positive science. Positive science means method that is called as science have a positive impact on the society. Right? Then he said that we can also develop sociology as a positive science. The second meaning of positive science means we can establish cause and effect relationship. We can establish or we can discover the causal mechanism. Right? Third implication of the positive science is that human behavior is a product of factors outside him. If I am aggressive because of certain external factors. If I am passive, that is due to certain external factors. If I am preparing for civil services, there is certain reason for that. That is external factor. So, what he said that sociology is a positive science, it was a type of commitment. He was not able to establish sociology as a positive discipline completely, but he was convinced, Comte, that it will attain one day this status of positive science. The only thing is that it will take some time, right? Then Herbert Spencer he said, law of evolution is the law of nature. Law of evolution is the law of nature. Right? Means that is inherent in the nature. What is inherent in the nature will be followed by every natural object. You can't say that earth is rotating around its axis, but I will not rotate. Can you say that? The revolution of earth around its axis is a natural phenomena. We have to do that. If earth is rotating around sun, that's a natural process. We have to do that if we are on the earth. Similarly, anything, any law that is inherent in nature will be followed by each and every object. So, what's the duty of the scientist? Just discover that law. Just discover that causal principle. Discover that causal relationship. Means scientists are not entrusted with the task of invention or innovation. Positive science is related to only discovery of laws that is inherent in the nature, because we all are part of this nature. Even human being is part of this nature. Human society is also the part of the nature. So, human society also has to follow the law. It will follow law of evolution. The sociologist's task is just to discover that law of social evolution. So, he says law of evolution is the law of nature. So, if sociology has to attain the status of positive science, it has to follow the law of social evolution. So, if sociology is to attain status of positive science, it has to follow the law of, in bracket, social evolution, and further he has described whatever he had to say. Right? The third person who also comes, his contribution comes under the category of positivism, and that is known as Karl Marx. We have dealt in detail. Marx was not a sociologist. Why? How can you say that Marx was not a sociologist? How would you say? that Marx was not a sociologist in true sense of the term.
Study of society was, imaginary. He never studied of society.
His study of society was imaginary.
No, his final thesis, whatever is his final stage.
His predictions might be imaginary, and that imagination we have discussed a lot yesterday. It may be our imagination that his imagination is imagination. We are imagining that what Marx predicted is an imagination. But we have to survive longer to witness that. Maybe my son, my grandson, my great-grandson and so on, 4, 5, 6 generations onwards, they will realize that what Marx said is the truth, because they are living in that stage. Right now we are saying it is utopian, imaginary, but we cannot say in absolute sense. So that's not the issue that does not make this person Karl Marx a sociologist. What are the criteria that are required to brand a thinker as sociologist?
He has to focus on some social problem or social challenge. He has to limit his study to society.
Okay, move a bit before. What are the criteria for a person to be branded as belonging to a particular discipline? Whom would you call psychologist? Everybody will claim, I have expertise in psychology. A person needs to define the subject matter that he is going to study under that discipline. He will have to be very clear about that. One may not agree with the other, that is not required. Weber said something else to be studied in sociology. Durkheim said something else is to be studied in sociology. The disagreement is not the issue. A person will be a disciplinarian when he is clear about what he is going to study under that discipline. Right? Second part is, he need to also be clear about the method of research, the method of inquiry. For example, Durkheim says we should study only those social facts that are external to individual. He is clear. What is observable from outside, that we are concerned with as a sociologist. He is describing about the method of observation, the methodology that is to be applied in the understanding of that subject matter. Marx has never said a single word about what to study in sociology, by which method. Did I teach you what according to Marx is the subject matter of sociology? What are the methodological approach Marx recommended to study the society? Did I teach those things? Never. He has not said even a single word. The only issue is that here, that we are using Marxist contribution in the sociological understanding of society. So, though Marx is put into the category of positivist sociologist, but he was not exclusively a positivist or a sociologist. He has described about the society. That's why he talks about the nature of human being, the freedom, autonomy of choice of human being. That is defining that human character is subjective. Then he says, under the concept of private property, human being is losing that subjectivity. It is becoming objective. Then he says, unless until we reinstate that subjectivity, human being will feel alienated, dissatisfied. Are you getting it? So, Marx has not contributed in the development of discipline called sociology directly. Indirectly, his contribution cannot be undermined. Right? But these three people have not been able to establish sociology as a distinct discipline, because Alfred Marshall had said, if sociology as a discipline exists, it will encompass in its fold all other disciplines. But it does not exist. He had said it will encompass, particularly he was an economist, economics under its fold. That was a doubt that was sown by Alfred Marshall, and he had concluded, but it doesn't exist as a distinct discipline. But what today we are getting, sociology exists as a distinct discipline. And the most important contribution in the establishment of the distinct discipline of sociology is that of Emile Durkheim. That's why Emile Durkheim is known as the real father of sociology. If Auguste Comte is known as the father of positivism, father of sociology, Emile Durkheim is said to be the real father of sociology. What did he do? Right? Emile Durkheim. Just write down a few lines. Before Emile Durkheim, Comte and Spencer worked hard to establish sociology as a distinct discipline. Sociology as a distinct discipline, but they were not successful. In their endeavor. They were not successful in their endeavor. Faced with this challenge, Durkheim tried to establish sociology as a distinct discipline, and that's why he is called the real father of sociology. Durkheimian analysis begins. Durkheimian analysis begins. Durkheimian analysis begins with criticism of Spencerian evolutionary theory, Spencerian evolutionary theory, on the one hand, and on the other, he was interested in separating sociology from psychology, biology and economics. He was successful in his endeavor. He was successful in his effort. You can write endeavor word we have already used. Right. So, if we don't want to make our paragraph monotonous, if we know some other term, first we have used endeavor, second effort. Right. What have you written? एक आदमी. In his effort, due to his methodological approach, which is known as social fact approach. I want to understand Durkheim, right? And his social fact approach. What exactly is the social fact approach? How many of you have studied in hostels? Hostels? 2. Only 2 people. 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? When you come from home, when the session begins in the college, you come individually. Some people might be coming by train. In our days, it was unreserved compartment. That was the most popular. Nowadays, people are riding on AC compartment and also flights. Anyway, but I am using the example of trains. So many of you would have been coming by train when session begins, and when you are starting from your home, you all started individually. Right? What was your behavior in the train? Of a person who is cool, composed, calm, serene, disciplined, and so on. Taking care of the fellow travelers, and so on. But once, after the sessions break, when we go back home, right? We go in group to the railway platform, board the same train, because simultaneously all those people who are coming from Assam will get their ticket reserved together, so that they go together, or from Andhra Pradesh they will have something like that from Delhi. So you boarded the train, maybe 10 people together out of 64 seats. How did you behave at that time? Were you disciplined? We were not disciplined at that time. You can see the changes in your behavior. Now, why did your behavior change? Have you ever thought? No, you know that. simple reason is, when you were coming to attend the session in the beginning, you were coming alone. When you were going back, you were going in group. Means human behavior changes when man is in group. The way of thinking changes. Later on you might realize what I did was not correct, but you are going to repeat the mistake again. I remember I was studying in Lucknow Christian Inter College. At that time 15, 16 was the age, and we would go together, 20 people from our place, Vaisali Express, that is a train, and we will board the train at 4:20 a.m. in the morning, right? And by the time it is 6 o'clock, we will not let anybody sleep. सोने का टाइम खत्म, बैठने दो, right? Whereas they have the right to sleep even during daytime. But while coming from that side, even if I was not having any reservation, I was not behaving like that, right? It means what? When we are in group, some distinct forces work on our mind, right? And that leads to a particular kind of behavior. Right? Durkheim wanted to study that. All sociologists are trying to study that group behavior. Now, out of all those undisciplined fellow students, some were undisciplined also when they were alone. Some were undisciplined because they were in group. Some were undisciplined because of some other reason. The reason for being undisciplined was different for different people. That reason is not important for sociologists. What is important for sociologists? The students in group are rude, observable from outside. Are you getting it? This is called also, it is derived from a person, MacDougall, which is known as group mind theory. MacDougall's group mind theory. Durkheimian social fact approach is based on the study of those facts which are known as social fact, which is observable from outside. Are you getting the difference? That's why Durkheim says society is sui generis. Society is sui generis. Sui generis is a French word that means self-generated. It has an independent existence from its component unit, that is the human being. Little bit understanding Durkheim is difficult because whatever he said was quite new to this world. For example, we all are sitting here. I am married and you are married, so only two people are married, rest of the people are not married, right? Why did you marry? Okay, come out, no problem. We are adult enough, mature enough to say all those things. To stability, to have stability in life. You mean to say that marriage makes the life stable? On my Facebook page, I saw a joke on marriage today, and she is a doctor, my Facebook friend, working in this ओखला में कौन सा हॉस्पिटल है? हार्ट सेंटर, स्कॉट्स हार्ट सेंटर, right? She is quite good So Sasur is saying to his दामाद, शादी करने के पहले क्यों नहीं बताया कि इतना पीते हो? तो दामाद कहता है, तुम बताए थे कि तुम्हारी बेटी जो है खून पीती है? भोजपुरी में लिखा हुआ है, वो कुछ उस टाइप का एक्सेंट है। मैं तो भोजपुरी से ही बिलोंग करता हूं, मैं कह नहीं पा रहा हूं अभी, एग्जैक्टली लाइन याद नहीं है, एक ही बार देखा था। हाउ डू यू से मैरिज ब्रिंग्स स्टेबिलिटी इन लाइफ? इट इज मेकिंग लाइफ ऑफ द मैन अनस्टेबल। राइट, ओके, दिस इज द वन पार्ट, स्टेबिलिटी। इफ यू आर गोइंग टू मैरी, व्हाई वुड यू मैरी? गिव मी अ रीजन। Social obligation. For him, the reason for getting married is different. Why would you marry? Having any girlfriend? Yes. So I want to spend my life with that particular lady, right? And that's why I'll be marrying. He had a different reason. She, he and she all have a different reason. Some people might be marrying because time has come for the sexual gratification. Some people might be marrying because his or his particularly parents are ailing and there is nobody to cook food for them. Everybody has their own reason. Durkheim says, sociologists are not concerned about those reasons. What sociologists are concerned about? When people get married, the marriage is identifiable through certain external expression. You take the barat, wedding procession, perform certain rites and rituals, come with the wife in your home. That is observable from outside. So these rites and rituals are observable from outside. That's the concern of sociologists. So sociologists will say this person is getting married. After the marriage, people have children observable from outside. The sexual relationship is not observable from outside, but the children are observable from outside. So he says, marriages helps in reproduction. He says only those things that are observable from outside, that is the subject matter of sociology. Are you getting somewhat social fact? Durkheim is difficult to understand. And this difficulty I can explain well. When I had taken this as optional in my misadventure of civil services examination, I had followed one of my friend. Right? So after reading for 2 months, I said, quit. I don't want to read sociology, I am going to take physics and maths. I don't know whether it was a right judgment or wrong judgment, whether quitting would have been good or non-quitting was good. He said, why do you want to leave sociology as discipline? You have worked hard for 3 months, 16 to 18 hours a day working, and you are getting good grip over also. I said, ये भैया दुर्खीम नहीं समझ में आता। कहता है, a criminal is punished, but the purpose of punishment is not to punish the criminal. अभी तक तो यही जानते थे कि उसको पनिश करने के लिए उसको जेल भेजा जाता है। He had said, do not try to impose your own logic on these great thinkers. He asked me a few questions. do you believe that these people are great thinkers and they must have thought much, much, much more than what you can even think of? I said yes. And for so many years, for 100 years, people are following. It means they must have some logic. The reason. You just try to understand the reason. Don't try to criticize them. Try to be in the shoes of those thinkers. And the debate was taking place at 1 a.m. Right? After one and a half hour, then I slept. And next morning, when I started reading Durkheim as such, I gradually started realizing him. And when I had not given even my first attempt properly in 1994, I had written 7 columns in Times of India. So those are the 94 columns. Right? After that I have not written. Right? Means there are certain clues that are required. To understand Durkheim, I have to be into his mode of thinking. Right? Then only we will be able to understand Durkheim. Because all other logics which we have been knowing till today will come in the way of Durkheim. Durkheim has entirely a different logic. So we have to understand that logic, and for which he has been criticized also. Raymond Aron, I will be dictating you, but let me first say something in explanatory mode. Raymond Aron says, Durkheimian method as Normalian. Durkheim's methodology, he says, as Normalian. Normalian, it is consisting of 2 words, norm plus alien. Norm means whatever is prevalent, what is acceptable. Alien means alien to what is the norm. So he says Durkheimian explanation is Normalian. It is alien to normative explanations or the prevailing norms. So all the logics of psychology, economics, biology, Durkheimian approach is alien to those approaches. So naturally you are bound to face a lot of difficulty while going into the logic of Durkheim. But we have to do that, and we will try to do that. Right? Write down. Every action of an individual, Durkheimian social fact approach, every action of an individual, every action of an individual is a social fact. But if we study every action of an individual is a social fact, but if we study all social facts, there won't be any difference between sociology, psychology and biology. Why do we brush in the morning? Why do we brush in the morning? Toothbrush? To keep our teeth clean. Can't we do in the evening? Okay. Why not in the mid-afternoon? Why do you want to clean your teeth in the morning? To make it hygienic? Right? You know, if you don't brush your teeth in the morning, you are likely to develop more immunity against many diseases. Because when we sleep, at that time we secrete a number of germs which is there in our saliva, which helps us build our immunity. It is said that once you wake up in the morning, whatever is in your mouth, gulp it. That will help you build better immunity, and that is why the reason that most of the animals, they have a better immunity against many diseases. Our concern is badbu nahi aani chahiye. That's why we clean at that time. So this cleaning brush in the morning is one way biological fact. Another is only regulator. Right? Means the simple cleaning the teeth is a biological fact, is a psychological fact. It means if sociologists start studying this cleaning the teeth, there won't be any difference between sociology and biology, sociology and psychology, and that's why we cannot establish a status of a distinct discipline. Right? So he says, only those social facts, write down. Durkheim says, only those social facts form the subject matter of sociology. Only those social facts form the subject matter of sociology which have three characteristics. Out of these three, the first two are prominent and third one is peripheral. The first characteristic is externality. Externality means external to individual. External to individual, observable from outside. External to individual, observable from outside. We can give another example for this. We are living in a democratic country, right? And in this democracy, one of the most important component of democracy is voting. Which party did you vote last time? Ready? You can lie me, no problem. TDP. Why? It had an alliance with BJP. Right? Means he has a reason to vote for TDP. And the reason seems to be quite illogical. Alliance with BJP. Some people might have the reason, I will vote for TDP because the industrial environment is bound to be good under that person Naidu. Some person might be voting to TDP only because he is also a Naidu, and so on. So different people have different reason to vote for TDP, so to say BJP. That's not important. That does not form the subject matter of sociology. What forms the subject matter of sociology? People voted, right? And then government was elected. Government was appointed. That is observable from outside. Voting, counting, majority, that forms the subject matter of sociology. Why did you vote? That is not the subject matter of sociology. And this is a very important element here. Durkheim does not deny the prevalence of motive meaning in the action of an individual. He says, yes, there might be a meaning, there will be a motive, no doubt. Means there will be a reason. I accept that. But that's not the concern of sociologist. That's a distinction from his previous contributor. They said our motive is outcome of external factor. He is silent about that. He is saying, I do not have the proper knowledge or authority to say whether your consciousness is subjective or objective. I am at all not concerned about that. I am concerned about only what is observable from outside. This is a different in approach of Durkheim from the other previous positivist thinkers. Are you getting it? Right? Write down further. Second one, constraints. It puts, yes.
Externality from observable fact. Positively talk about observable fact.
That's what he is talking about. I said consciousness, about consciousness. I said Durkheim accepted that when a person acts, right, his action has a motive, a reason. He provides meaning to his action. Now then he is silent whether this meaning is subjective or objective. He is silent. He doesn't say anything about the nature of the meaning by invoking Kant or X or Y or Z. He said, whatever it may be, I am not concerned about that as a sociologist. What I am concerned about, when two young adult people of opposite sex, they marry, they set up a new household and procreate. They reproduce children and a new household or family comes into existence. All these are observable from outside. Why did X married? Why did Y married? For stability, for sexual gratification, for children, or what? It is immaterial for Durkheim. Whether the consciousness, the reason is subjective or objective, Durkheim is not worried about that. Right? Constraints, it puts constraints on the behavior of the individual. It puts constraints on the behavior of the individual. It puts constraints on the behavior of the individual. Those social facts are present. So marriage is a social fact that is present in the society that constrains our behavior. That if I want to live with a person of opposite sex, first I will have to marry. Now things are changing. That is a different thing. Live-in relationships are becoming norm. So like all functionalists, Durkheim was also incapable of explaining how the norms changes. That's the criticism, limitation. In yesteryears, marriage was an essential component to live together. Today, marriage is not the essential component to live together. So, that is the limitation for Durkheimian approach. Durkheimian theory, like all functionalists, is incapable of explaining change. Are you getting it? Right. Third factor is generality. Generality. Generality means social facts are general. Social facts are general. That is, every adult understands it. Did our parent teach us what is marriage? Never. But we know. When we were 16, 15, 17 years old, we knew what is marriage. That's the meaning of generality. Means it is so deeply ingrained in the socialization process that nobody has to explain what is marriage. All people or children, when they grow, they come to know, they know well what is the marriage. Are you getting it? Similarly, all of us, when we grow, we know what is the state government. Nobody teaches us what government will say we have to do. That's what it is, general. Right? So, three factors, two prominent: externality, constraints, and the third one is generality. Right? Write down further. Social facts are not, third character. Now, para change and write down. Social facts are not the arithmetic sum. Social facts are not the arithmetic sum of the individual facts. Individual facts means the reason, the purpose, the motive of the individual behind his action. So, in bracket you can add purpose, motive, belief. Arithmetic sum, it is not the arithmetic sum. Means, as far as arithmetic sum is concerned, 1 plus 1 plus 1 is equal to 3. Right? But in case of society, it is not. 1 plus 1 is also equal to 1. Means you cannot, suppose we are here around 20 people, 15, 16 people. If I know the motive of each of the individual, I cannot describe the group behavior. So, social facts are not the arithmetic sum of the individual facts, rather they are sui generis, self-generated. Rather they are sui generis, self-generated. Right? When Durkheim compares society with individual, he is trying to compare society with individual, and you will find that Durkheimian approach is a kind of determinism that is known as social determinism. Durkheimian approach is a kind of determinism that is known as social determinism. Determinism means you consider that every phenomena and its explanation can be reduced to a single factor. Durkheim says that every phenomena, including the individual human behavior, can be reduced to the level of group behavior. Means our personality is shaped by the society. We in turn do not shape the society. Right on. According to Durkheim, social facts are logically prior to individual. Social facts are logically prior to individual. Full stop. He compares society with a flowing river. He says, when a person jumps into a flowing river, the course and flow of the river is not affected or changed by it. Rather, the river shapes the movement of the swimmer. Now, a swimmer cannot alter the course of the river. Rather, the river shapes the movement of the swimmer. River is flowing. It has its own speed, it has its own course of action. The individual who are born in society, they are like jumping in a flowing river. That means this society shapes the individual personality, but in turn, individual personality does not shape the society. Right on? The birth of a person is like that. His personality is shaped by the society. His personality is shaped by the society. Individual does not have any impact in shaping the society. This was being criticized by G.H. Mead.
These concepts, one factor people.
Hmm?
These established terms that the society is one factor people. Means they only shape it.
Society shapes. What is saying? That individual does not change the norms of the culture or society. How does that change? It follows its own path. It follows its own path. We'll see that when he says that cause of a social fact should be sought in the pre-existing social fact, not in the individual fact. We'll come to that. Right? Society is independent of individual volition. Society is independent of individual volition. Society is independent of individual volition. It is sui generis. Volition, V-O-L-I-T-I-O-N. It is sui generis. According to Durkheim, social institutions possesses all these characteristics, social institutions possess all these characteristics, possess all these characteristics. Hence, sociology is mainly the study of social institutions. Sociology is mainly the study of social institutions. Marriage, family. Now, whether family is institution or not, family is association, that's a different debate. Education, schools. Education is institution. School is a very peculiar example of educational institutions putting constraints. In my family, it is believed that a child should not be sent into the school before he attains or she attains the age of 5. But the moment my own son became 3-year-old, I was a lot worried about it. And one of the reason was, I said next year, my mother also said next year, my wife said no this year. The reason she thought, सब स्कूल जाएंगे ये घर में क्या करेगा? Are you getting it? It is putting constraints on our behavior. That even though we understand that the age of 3 is not the conducive age for a child to be out of the protection of his family even for 4 hours in a day. But we have to send. That's the education putting constraint on the behavior of the individual. Right? Para change right down. The course of a social fact, cause, not course. The cause of a social fact should not be sought in the individual facts, should not be sought in the individual facts, rather in the pre-existing social facts. Rather, in the pre-existing social facts. Pre-existing social facts. Means, suppose there is a social fact SF, right? I want to know its cause. One way of trying to analyze it, how many people are doing this, and then seeking what are the reason for them doing it. For example, every November around 22,000 people in Delhi get married. It's a marriage season. One way of trying to understand and explain the cause of marriage as to know the individual reasons why X, Y, Z is getting married, and then try to explain it. He says this is nothing else but futility of the exercise. Rather, we should try to see the reason in pre-existing social fact. SFP. What is that? At this point of time, I cannot make you understand. But when we read, I am trying, let me try. When we read division of labor, why does division of labor takes place? Why does division of labor takes place? Suppose in this institution, I am teaching sociology, and tomorrow I may say I don't want to teach the second paper, let someone else teach it. That's my individual reason for not teaching the second paper. He says that's not the sociological reason. Right? What he says, he has sought an example from biology. He says the struggle for existence is most acute among homogeneous organisms. If you see the biological organisms, what you find? The maximum competition is between people having common goal, like goal, not common goal, like goal, same goal. And this is going to generate conflict. That's why a struggle for existence is most acute among homogeneous organisms. So what is the way to avoid the conflict? Differentiate your need itself. Right? So what we are finding here, if I keep here a social fact as division of labor, right? What is its cause? A struggle for existence is most acute among homogeneous organisms. I was first in paper 1, I was bad in paper 2, I like to teach paper 1, I like to teach paper 2, I didn't have access to material, X, Y, Z, forget about that. He says more and more people are teaching, so let us differentiate the need. It is putting pressure on me to avoid the competition or conflict. That's what Durkheim is saying. Right? This is what he is saying, that the cause of a social fact should be sought in the pre-existing social fact, not in the individual fact or motive or reason. Are you getting it? Then this is impact of this. So there will be impact of this, right? Effect of this, SFE. SFE. Effect of the social fact. He says, do not try to correlate the cause of a social fact with that of the impact of the social fact. Do not try to relate this with this. So, if you try to relate, what you will see? This causes this causes this. Then what will happen? You will start predicting this will cause this will cause this will cause this. You will try to predict the distant future. Right? So he says, do not try to link the cause of a social fact with the effect of the social fact. Write down. Durkheim cautions sociologists from linking cause of a social fact with that of the effect of the social fact. If one does so, sociology will have a teleological flavor. A teleological. Tele plus logical. Tele means distant. Teleological labor. Means you will like predicting the future. Prediction is not a scientific activity. Prediction is not a scientific activity. Durkheim was completely averse to the idea of prediction, speculation. He says a scientific theory should be based only on observable behavior. What can be observed from outside. Observed means empirical observation. Are we getting it? Last point in this. If there are more than one cause, if there are more than one cause of a social fact, if there are more than one cause of a social fact, the social fact will be of more than one type. If there are two cause, two type of that social fact. If there are three cause, there will be three types of that social fact. Right? Then, if the question comes, methodological approach of Durkheim, it is nothing but it is talking about social fact approach. But here you can incorporate that Normalian method. Right? What is the Normalian method? How Durkheim has tried to explain that? Right? Suppose Durkheim is going to talk about the phenomena of suicide. Let us assume. Right? You know what he will do? He will collect all the pre-existing explanations. Pre-existing explanations. X has contributed, Y has contributed, Z has contributed. Different contributions are there about the cause of suicide. He will collect it. That means, if there are n explanation, 1, 2, 3, n, he will collect it. Then he will put forward his own explanation, n plus 1th. Then Raymond Aron criticizes him. Instead of proving his propositions, Durkheim was more interested in disapproving the previous propositions. So he will prove this is incorrect, this is incorrect, this is incorrect. Now conclusion is you have n plus 1 option. N is wrong. So n plus 1th is right. It's a critique of Durkheim. But that's methodology Durkheim has adopted. What Raymond Aron says, that instead of proving his propositions, he tried to disapprove the pre-existing propositions of a phenomenon. Now n is wrong, that doesn't make n plus 1th right. That's the criticism of Raymond Aron. But Durkheimian explanation says, out of n plus 1 option, n has been proved to be wrong. So n plus 1th is correct. N plus 1th means Durkheim's proposition is correct. So you can use it as his methodological approach, also as a criticism also. Durkheimian methodological approach as well as criticism, and this method is known as Normalian. Right? This is about social fact approach. Now we come to Durkheimian's theory of suicide. What is suicide? What is suicide? Anyone being in suicidal tendency? Any time, any point of time in their life? No. I had been in one for 1.5 years. 1994 October to almost 1992 years. So I can teach suicide very well. दिल से समझता हूं इसे. What exactly is this? Right? So what is suicide? Have you read the book, novel called The Other Side of Me by Jeffrey Archer? Jeffrey Archer, or I think it's not Jeffrey Archer. No, it's not Jeffrey Archer. No, there is one other novelist who is a very prominent novelist. I have read his books also. The Other Side. There is another name of the book is The Other Side of the Dream or something like that. Okay, one day I will be telling you the name of that author. But anyway, I am telling a different story. He has written also a book called The Other Side of Me. It was his perhaps last book. He is still alive. Right? And you know, in that book, what he has described? He has described about his own depression and his own suicidal tendency. He has written in that, the novel begins like that, and that's a true story, that I was standing having 20 sleeping pills in my hand. I never tried that. Right? So there was always conflict in my mind. Should I do, should I not? And my mind always was convinced I will never do it. Right? There is conflict sometimes in your mind. So he writes, 20 pills in my hand, I was going to gallop. And the reason was, I wanted to be a novelist. I wrote many things, but none of them were appreciated or accepted or went for publication. That was at the age of around 20, 21. Right? And that psychology during that period unfolds in such a manner that he doesn't take those pills and says to himself, let me give another chance to myself. And the next novel that he wrote became the bestseller in the world. That's the somewhat inspiring story of the people who had suicidal tendency. So if some time comes in your mind such thought, don't be worried. Just think something positive is going to happen now onwards. Right? Anyway, God does not put you into that mindset. So what is suicide? Renuka. You must have some understanding of suicide. Tripti. कभी सोचा है सुसाइड? कभी नहीं, करने के बारे में नहीं. करने के बारे में नहीं. How do you define suicide? Ram Prabhu. Taking away your own life. That's our common man, layman description, analysis, definition of suicide. Durkheimian definition of suicide is not that simple. Durkheimian definition of suicide is not that simple. So how he defines suicide? Write down. Suicide is an individual phenomena. Suicide is an individual phenomena that is the outcome of positive or negative act positive or negative act of an individual that causes his death or strives to produce that result. Or that strives to produce that result. Means, if your action is such that is causing either death or striving to cause the death, either by positive act or by negative act. So, what is the meaning of positive act? What is the meaning of negative act? Right? Parachan, write down. Positive act is to kill oneself. Positive act is to kill oneself. Negative act is not to save oneself. Negative act is not to save oneself when one can. टाइटैनिक कितने लोगों ने देखी है? सबने टाइटैनिक देखा है मूवी? टाइटैनिक मूवी नहीं देखी है, आज ही जाके देखना, ठीक है? पढ़ाई लिखाई तो होता रहेगा. यू मस्ट वॉच दैट मूवी, राइट? फॉर इट्स सीन, फॉर इट्स स्टोरी लाइन, for all the finer details of the movie, right? Did you see that Titanic movie? In that it was the captain of the ship who was the first to know that the ship is going to sink. He did not try at all to save himself because he knew the number of people who are on board and the facilities that are available to save is less. So, he was having a drink in his hand, listening to those pianos and guitarists, right? And that expression, if you look at the face of that captain's ship, is marvelous, better than the heroines and heroes. Still expression, right? This is also an act of suicide. If he would have wanted, he would have been the first person to save himself. According to Durkheim, this is also an act of suicide. Right? So, Durkheimian suicide is slightly different from the common sense definition of the suicide, that suicide is the act that either causes or strives to produce the result positively or negatively, directly or indirectly. Right? What is the cause of suicide? Right? As we see the Normalian method, so he collects the previously biological and psychological explanations, right? So, prior to Durkheimian explanations, there were a different kind of explanation about the cause of suicide, right? Write down. Prior to Durkheim, the cause of suicide was located in the biology and psychology of the person. The biology and psychology of the person. There were two explanations. One was, suicide is a phenomena of imitation. So, first explanation is, suicide is a phenomenon of imitation. and second is suicide is caused by neurotic disorder. Durkheim explains this phenomenon of imitation in a different way. He says the process of imitation is confused with three other phenomena. Write down. According to Durkheim, there are three phenomena that are confused as phenomena is the plural, NA, that are confused as phenomenon of imitation. Phenomenon is singular. Number one, fusion of consciousness, phenomenon of imitation. Number one, fusion of consciousness as in a revolutionary mob. Right? Revolutionary mob, MOB mob. You all must have attended marriages, right? And you also would have participated in the marriage procession, right? When grooms or would-be groom, they go with band parties, alcohols and other things, the procession for half an hour or 1 hour to the bride's home or whatever may be, right? Have you watched the behavior of the people? Initially, you will find that most of the participants of those marriage processions are reluctant to dance. The band party is going on, but people are reluctant to dance. As you move forward, the sound, the dancing of the people, you will find sometimes even old age lady of 70, 75 years, 80 years age men. Now, they may not be a perfect dancer, but they do try also, shedding all their inhibitions. They shed their inhibitions and they dance. We generally assume that these people are dancing because they have seen other dancing, which is actually not the reason. So, what is the reason? The reason is the people lose their individuality into the collective identity. There are two aspects of our life, we as an individual and we as a member of a group. Group behavior, group conscience is different. My conscience is different. Group conscience is known as collective conscience. Individual conscience is known as individual conscience. There is a conflict between individual and collective conscience, right? In that situation, I just forget about my individual conscience and act fusion of my consciousness takes place with the collective conscience, like it happens in all the revolutionary mobs. Anna Hazare movement, crores were on the road who would never participate. I give you an example that in this Ram Leela Maidan, there were many families who brought their young children as young as 2 to 3 years old. Any thinking person will never take his 2 to 3 year old child in the crowded place like that. slightest of provocation, were going to harm those children. Because others were capable of running, children are not. Then why did those parents, they did not love their child? Was that? It was not that. They lost their individual conscience into the collective conscience of the society. As it happens in such a revolutionary period, we just forget about ourselves. We'll never act those things as we do in a revolutionary situation. We don't worry about our own life, our children's life. We may repent later on, that is a different thing. I should not have taken my children to Ram Leela Maidan. That's entirely a different thing. This is called fusion of consciousness, that is losing one's individuality, write down, losing one's individuality consciousness, losing one's individuality consciousness to the conscience of the society or group. Right? So that is considered as repetition, whereas actually it is not imitation. Right? Second, individual adaptation of the society. Individual adaptation to the society. If in a village women are wearing sari, a particular dress, that does not mean they are imitating each other. Rather, they are adapting to the way of life of the group. Right? All of you women particularly, there are a lot of restrictions, that's why I am giving the example. You wear jeans. I have found more women wearing jeans than men, at least in Delhi. Right? Because there is newfound freedom. Earlier there was a restriction, now there is no restriction. So definitely there is attraction when you get newfound freedom. But all of those jeans wearing women during certain occasions, marriages particularly, do you find any women wearing jeans on those occasions? They like to wear lehengas, saris, etc. That's the traditional. We can say one is imitating the other. Actually it is not so. They are adapting to the situation. That situation calls for such dresses, and that's why they are wearing. This is called individual adaptation, because if you go in jeans, you may be laughed at. Aaj bhi, right? And that's why you go in that. So you are adapting to the situation. You are adapting to the lifestyle of the group to which you belong. Right? Third, repetition of an act. Third, repetition of an act without the interference of the former. Repetition of the act without the interference of the former. Repetition of the act without the interference of the former. There is a place here called Janakpuri, right? And Janak Palace. There are tall buildings, not much tall, but from previous standards, 7-8 story building was called as tall building in Delhi. Now you will find 30, 35, 40-story building as normal in NCR region. But these buildings, Janakpuri Center's buildings, were infamous as a point of suicide. People will commit suicide by jumping. So every year, nowadays what they have done, they have closed the top floor. They don't let anybody go up. There is a lot of surveillance, right? So nowadays I am not hearing any cases of suicide, right? Nowadays metro is more easy. You are waiting for the metro. As soon as the metro arrives, jump. छोड़ चले इस दुनिया को, right? So today a person jumped in front of the metro, and there was another person who was watching. Next day or after some day, you find that person also jumping in front of the metro and committing suicide. We are likely to interpret that though that person who committed suicide later imitated the former, whereas nobody is going to commit suicide like that, for that reason. This is a repetition of an act without the interference of the former is misinterpreted as the phenomenon of imitation. So what he says, to refute the imitation theory of suicide, he says three phenomena are not phenomenon of imitation, rather we have to see these in a different context. Then he says if imitation would have been the reason, and if you draw a geographical map of suicide, then what would you find? You will find a concentration of the suicide rate at the center, and as you move outward, the suicide rate will have a tendency to decline. Right? Write down. Durkheim further argues that if suicide is caused by imitation, then on drawing a map, we will find a zone of high concentration, as center and reducing suicide cases as we move outward towards the periphery. He had collected a large amount of data on suicide, on suicide from a large number of societies, over geographical regions, but he didn't get any such pattern. Immediately adjacent to a zone of high density there was a zone of very low density. There was a zone of very low density. The patterns were quite irregular. The patterns were quite irregular. The patterns were quite irregular. Right? So he has refuted this phenomena of imitation or imitation theory of suicide. The second we had said about neuroticism. Something is coming from outside. खोलने से कुछ नहीं होगा. खोल दो थोड़ा. खोल दो. Open it. Right? The second reason is what I said, neurotic disorder or neuroticism. Right? Offer do. Right? Switch on that. This one, right. Write down next point. Criticizing neurotic disorder as a cause of suicide. Criticizing neurotic disorder as a cause of suicide, Durkheim argues that the incidences of neuroticism is one of the highest among the Jewish community. The incidences of neuroticism is one of the highest among the Jewish community, but suicide rate is one of the lowest among Jews. Jews suffer from maximum neurotic disorder in this world, but the cases of suicide is minimum in the Jewish community. So that correlationship is also wrong, right? Now he put forward his own theory. Write down. Rejecting the pre-existing analysis. Rejecting the pre-existing analysis, Durkheim proposes his own theory of suicide. According to him, suicide is definitely an individual phenomenon. According to him, suicide is definitely an individual phenomenon. There is also predisposition among those. There is also predisposition among those to commit suicide, who are neurotic patients, but the neuroticism is essentially caused due to social forces. On analyzing the data on suicide, across a wide range of societies, he found that suicide rate in a particular society is constant. Suicide rate in a particular society is constant, means if 10 people are committing suicide this year in Delhi, next year 10 persons will definitely commit suicide. So in a society, in a group, in a community, the suicide rate is constant. This constant factor indicates a possible explanation. What Durkheim says? Thus Durkheim concludes, suicide is an individual phenomena. And suicide rate is a social phenomena. The suicide rate in a society is constant. And also normal. Means, now there is a thing where he says normal phenomena and pathological phenomena. So when he is describing this word suicide is normal, one of the meaning of this normal means every known society witnesses the cases of suicide. Normality means every known society. This is the one meaning of normal phenomena. Later on we will see what are the other meanings. Every known society witnesses the cases of suicide. It is found in all societies. That's why it is normal, but it is one of the cause, one of the explanation, but not the sufficient explanation of normal and pathological. The second part is that he says normal means the phenomena is functional for the society. Suicide is good for the society. And here you start getting confused. How can suicide be good for a society? He says it performs certain function which helps in the collective solidarity, which brings in the solidarity in the society. We'll see that later, normal, pathological. To explain suicide rate, Durkheim coins a term, suicidogenic impulse or suicidogenic current. In some book you will find the word current, in some book you will find the book impulse or suicidogenic current. According to him, every society possesses suicidogenic impulse, which in itself is a product of social configuration, which in itself is a product of social configuration. Social configuration refers to the arrangement of different elements of society which values, norms, institutions, with values, norms, institutions, etc. Their compatibility and incompatibility. Their compatibility and incompatibility. So what he is actually saying, suicidogenic impulse or current. As we have said, society is sui generis. So there is inherent characteristics of a society. It possesses a suicidogenic impulse, right? This impulse causes certain suicide rate. This impulse causes a certain suicide rate. If you are aggressive, you are bound to fight with other people, and the degree of aggression will decide about how many persons you will fight each day. Right? करना ही करना है आज झगड़ा, because that is inherent characteristics. वो आपके ब्लड में है, जीन्स में है. Right? This suicidogenic impulse, he says, is a function of social configuration. Social configuration. How things in society are arranged. What are the things, what are the components of society? There are many components of society. Values. There may be two values prevailing in a society which are opposing each other. For example, today women are expected to supplement the income of their husband in the middle class. But at the same time, women are also expected to maintain the family, to maintain their purity in the Indian society. When you are going to work outside to supplement the work, it brings people in close proximity with the people of opposite sex. So there are two value oppositions. We will explain that tomorrow on the basis of the examples of Indian society. Right? So, values, norms, beliefs, institutions of the society, they are there and they will be reinforcing each other, they will be opposing each other. That is called configuration. Compatibility and incompatibility. If there is too much cohesiveness in the society, that will also produce suicide. If there is less cohesiveness of individual and society, that will also produce suicide. The only thing is that the kind of suicide will be different. If you are too much ingrained with the society, you are likely to sacrifice your own life for the sake of society. That's called altruistic suicide. If you are too much autonomous, individualistic, on failure, you are likely to commit suicide. That is called egoistic suicide. Tomorrow we will be moving forward from here onwards. Thank you.